The Mexican government is engaged in a vital effort to disrupt and dismantle the drug cartels. The military has been called, local police is being recognized, retrained and purged of corrupt elements, and changes have been made to streamline criminal trials. The result has been unprecedented number of arrests, as the ambassador just said, extraditions, prosecutions, and large-scale seizures of drugs, weapons, cash, and also assets of the criminal crime. These efforts have also led to increased violence in criminal gangs and confront government forces and battle among each other for control of the key territory. These events have been widely publicized on both sides of the US-Mexico border. The media coverage, however, often fails to provide sufficient context of what we're going through, and it is sure and it is aware that the perceptions of Mexico is a good place to live, work, and do business, and very often it odds with the reality that probably you get to listen on the media. As I was saying, probably the number of armed confrontation has increased in the last year, marking since the government's enforcement efforts in order to dismantle the organized crime. But the vast majority of these victims, 90% of them, are involved to drug cartel involvement. That is probably around 7% only is involved due to military or police forces that have been killed in the line of duty. And roughly, probably 3% of this only involve innocent bystanders. Although we know that any civilian loss is unacceptable, statistically speaking, in a country with over 112 million people of inhabitants, the risk of becoming a victim of drug violence is extremely small. Now, also, in addition of the confrontations that are concentrated only in certain regions of the country, these areas are to be along the drug trafficking corridors, including the border cities of Nuevo Laredo, Reynosa, Ciudad Juárez, and Tijuana, because these are border towns. I belong to Chihuahua. Chihuahua, unfortunately, as a state, we are a state of 3 million people. This is, in comparison to the population of the United States, is only 1% of the US population. Roughly, the United States have 300 million people, and there are some studies that say that probably among 25 to 30 million Americans have issues with drug trafficking or drug dependency. You're talking about that moreover 10% of the American population is requiring an illegal drug. And since we are the neighbors, we have the best things, because this is the biggest market in the world is still the United States of America. But also, we are suffering the consequences of these flaws, as the American government has recognized. As I was saying, according to the United Nations, the Mexico's homicide rate is 11.6 per 1,000 residents, which is high, but it is still lower than many other countries, just like Brazil, Colombia, Dominican Republic, Ecuador, Jamaica, Russia, and South Africa. If you take Mexico as a region, yeah, the northern region is kind of problematic because this corridor I was mentioning about. But the rest of the country is helping us out to still be the 10th, one of the top 10 countries to have the GDP gross by the tourism economic demand. As well, we must say that for the next 30 years, the United States will still be one of the main powers in economic development. We are talking that the population in the whole world is close to 600 million people, and it's 6,100 million people, and the United States, it only represents 5% of the whole world. But 40% of everything that is sold and bought in the world, it's going through the United States. In Mexico, we have this dependency on the market. 85% of all the goods that we export go to the United States. And in accordance to the reports of the Secretary of Economy, the investment in Mexico has lowered, not only because of these problems that we're having on security. As a matter of fact, Walmart Center, which is one of the biggest companies in the world, they just announced that they were going to open 300 more stores in an investment on around $1 billion this year only in Mexico. So those are one of the facts that are helping us in order to understand why the advantages of being the neighbor of the biggest market in the world, for good and bad, is some of the issues that right now we're suffering. That probably the partner from Colombia will talk about this main problem that we're having. They had to deal with this in the 80s and in the 90s. And some of the things that they have been, that they implemented on working for getting out this problem, such as the reform for the judiciary system, right now we're doing it in Mexico. In Chihuahua, for example, we already changed about 3 years ago the change of the judiciary system for an oral change. Right now in Mexico, there is this big famous movie which is called Presumed Innocent, which talks about the defects or the problems that the current judiciary system in Mexico is having. But this is being changed if we make public the judiciary system and everybody gets to know how we apply the law. In conclusion, we can say that the Mexican government is responding to the problems aggressively. These efforts must continue. In addition, the primary consumer of drugs and supplier of weapons, which is the U.S., should be a part of the solution. And as Mr. Trevino said, no matter what the next president of Mexico belongs to what party, they know that they will have to keep on working together in order to reduce the problem of illegal drug trafficking as well as the supply of illegal weapons into Mexico. And the solution can be helped by providing accredited and funding technology support, as well as working to reduce the internal demand for narcotics and stopping the export of weapons. Mexico is also pushing forward various economic and political reforms that will improve the country's competitive position, fueling the economy growth. Despite the current problems and challenges, Mexico's economy is growing again. After a brief pause due to the global economic crisis, foreign investment and productive retail capacity is again flowing into the country. Mexico is generating more domestic demands and products, and it is poised to benefit from the near-source trend that is causing global manufacturers to invest in plant capacity closer to the final market to overcome even higher transportation costs and logistic issues, not to mention the benefits that managing the same time zone. This tendency will continue. Right now, the main rival that we could have is China due to the lower products. But in the last 5 years, we have changed that barrier. The Americans are also looking that the cheap cost of labor is still better in Mexico rather than the cost that they do if they take a plant to China. This tendency will continue, especially as the China-Mexico labor rate differential disappears. So that is so far what we want to share with you.